Hi, this is David Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, or wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, it's wonderful to have you along. So we got some business to take care of. First, we have a sponsorship this week, sponsored by Ari and Karen. Lila Nishmas, my grandmother, Dvor Rivka Bas Reb Hillel, upon her 10th yahrzeit. She was our family's symbol of chesed, love, and humility. What can I tell you? These days, I have the extra zchus of having a lot of very, very special people who I feel a tremendous kesher to, who are sponsoring it. And since they don't want to include all of their names, I won't either. But thank you, and it's wonderful to hear from you. And should be taka a Yilei Nishmas for your grandmother. I have a little letter that I got that I feel like I need to read because the person said to me specifically, please read this. My whole family, including both my parents, my 18-year-old brother, me, I'm 16, and my younger siblings who watch sometimes when my parents do, love your style of speaking. My father commented to me today when he saw me watching your most recent shiur/podcast, good, that he likes you, that you're real, and some other compliments that I'm sorry I don't remember. He kissed you on the screen. Now that's very nice, because there was a time in my life where people used to say I had a very slappable face. So it's nice to have Shana Pudim that's a whole different thing. I usually have a lot of people who used to want to give me hugs. I don't know why, there's something teddy bearish about me, I guess. Now I do the elbow bump. So you should know that for all the people out there who don't like you, there are plenty of people who find you refreshing. But you know that already because you said yourself that there are plenty of serious rabbis who are trying to fill the gap. Please read this out loud on your next podcast so I know you read this, and because it's very interesting when you read people's letters. By the way, I'm laughing now just imagining how you'll read this. Thank you for being funny. I hear my siblings watching a Torah Live video featuring you where you're a sitter. We mentioned that one. It's amazing that you cater to all ages, kids, teens, and adults. Most people can't do that. Thank you very much, and it is true. First of all, it's only real senior citizens who get most of my jokes. They're references from so long ago. Yeah, I have read letters from people who are in elementary school, to high school, to collegiates, to young adults, young marrieds, middle-aged. What we do here is something sort of universal. And I remember somebody wrote me once, they said, it must take you such a long time to prepare what you're going to say. And I said, no, usually before I get in to speak, I say to my wife, well, what should I talk about? I was like, I don't know what you should talk about. So sometimes I ask my kids, and sometimes somebody mentions a suggestion, you know, and sometimes I'm more inspired, sometimes I'm less inspired, but I got an email that I must share with you. Hi, Rabbi Orlofsky, thank you for your podcast. I really look forward to it every week. I was wondering if you would consider doing a series on the Yamim Noraim Tefillos. There's a very good possibility that I will be davening from home this year because there's a shortage of space in shuls. Without a chazan leading the tefillos with song and feeling, I started looking through the machzor to see how to make it meaningful on my own, and would love to hear your thoughts on some of the crucial tefillos. And yes, I've listened to all of your shiurim on Elul that are available on Torah Anytime. Now, this touched me on a very deep level. I have 8 daughters, and you know, to find, in America it's different. In America you have actual shuls. Here we have a lot of apartment shuls, shtiblach, things like that, and even the regular shuls, the Ezras Nashim is not very large. Now with Corona, where they're breaking the minyanim down even smaller. In fact, it's even talk of a general shutdown here for Rosh Hashanah like they did for Pesach, which would be absolutely devastating as far as I'm concerned on a lot of different levels. But even the places that are going and that are going to be open, a lot of them aren't going to have it as Nashim. And I know from my daughters and from my wife that they gain a tremendous amount by coming to shul on Rosh Hashanah. So when I saw this, it touched me in a very, very profound way. And ad kedei kach, that I'm going to do something that I have not done in a long time, and that is I'm going to make more than one a week, because we don't have that much time left till the Yamim Noraim when I got this email. And I was inspired. So hopefully they'll be coming out like every 2 days. That's my plan, to help people get ready for Rosh Hashanah, because I think this is such an important and brilliant idea. So let's get priorities straight. Okay? First things first. The most important thing on Yom Kippur is to fast. That's the most important thing. The next most important thing is to say the Oshamnu and the Al-Chetz. That's the Ikar mitzvah of the day. Everything else is secondary. The most important thing on Rosh Hashanah is to hear the shofar. Yeah? And everything else is secondary. Now, obviously, the davening has been set up in such a way as to be able to help us accomplish what it is we're trying to do during that day. So you have to prioritize. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. There was a letter once in the Hamadiyah, I think, but a woman who said that she couldn't believe that these young mothers come to shul with their little kids. The little kids are making noise. They're interrupting. She said, when I had little kids, I stayed home with my kids and I took care of them. I didn't go to shul. She says, I had somebody in the Ezra's Nashim changing the baby's diaper right in the front of everybody. Why don't you have consideration for the people? She says, I waited till my kids were old enough that I didn't have to stay home with them, and then I went to shul. So, what can I tell you? I remember one time I was davening in shul, and it was a small shul. And this fellow came just for Kol Nidre. And I don't know why. I don't know what his situation was. Full disclosure, I don't have all the details. All I know is he came with a little kid. And the little kid was fetching this, and he would push past, and it was very packed. He would push past me and go out and come back and go out and come back and talk and carry on. It killed the Nila for me. And at the end of Nila, he obviously was aware of it, because at the end of Nila, he says to me, sorry, but there was nothing I could do. And I thought, sure there is. You see that guy over there? His kid was fetching. He took him outside. He davened in the hallway so that his kid wouldn't disturb anybody else. So your Ikar mitzvah is to take care of your kids. That's the most important thing. And so you got to be real. You got to be real. There was a young lady who came and asked me the following question. She says, I really get a tremendous amount for the Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur davening. But it was before Yom Kippur, and my sister said, listen, I got a bunch of little kids and I'm pregnant. I'm going to have a very hard time fasting. Could you come and help me with the kids? So she asked me, and she says, listen, I'm going to lose out on my whole Yom Kippur davening. Should I do that or not? I said, listen, I'm not going to paskin this. This is too serious. So I went to ask somebody who, if he's not a posek, he has access to all the poskim. Without hesitating, he said, what's the question? Of course you help your sister. Yeah. The mitzvah of chesed is d'oraisa, the davening is d'rabbanu. What's the question? We don't always put the emphasis on the right things, and that's a bit of a problem. But okay. So first thing first is get your priorities straight. Okay. You don't have to say everything. if you can't. Got to be real. And the Mishnah Berurah itself brings down, it's better to say less with kavana than to say more without kavana. So again, you have to be real. There are people who are not as fluent in the Yom Noraim davening. I have reached an age where Baruch Hashem, even Yom Kippur has become rote for me. Yeah, there's no more surprises. I know where everything is coming and how everything is going. But my daughter, when she was 13 or 14, she says, I'm going to shul. I don't know what's going on. I don't know where to sit. I don't know what to stand. I don't know. So, Al Yom Hazeh, it's 6 years later, I sit down with her Erev Rosh Hashanah, Erev Yom Kippur with her machzor, and we go over. What do you say? What do you skip? What do you do? You do this for Slichos. We do this for Shal Yom Kippur. I guess really one time we should do this for Slichos, but for now, I'm going to start focusing on Shal Yom Kippur because I just don't think we have enough time. So, first thing is, you have to have the tools of the trade. Remember, somebody came to my son's bar mitzvah, and my son was laning the whole parasha, and he bought him a yad. You know those little things that are shaped like a hand with a little finger sticking out that you use to follow the place. And he said to me, a professional needs his tools. And I thought that was such an interesting thing. You know, you need your tools. You have to know what works well. If you've ever had to carve meat, you know that having the right knife makes all the difference in the world. I had a friend of mine who was a mashkiach in a Pesach hotel, and he was talking about how you have to watch the chefs because they like to use their own knives. And when no one's looking, they substitute them. They're used to their knife. And a particular knife is good for, this will be good for cutting this and cutting that, and there's a whole science to it. You know, Jackie Mason once said, he says, Gentiles, they love screwdrivers. They have regular screwdrivers. They have Phillips head screwdrivers. They have electric screwdrivers. They have screwdrivers with lights on them, things that spin, things that do all kinds of things. So a Jew has a butter knife. Walk into every Jewish home is a butter knife with a little kvetch at the end that they use. But needless to say, if you have the right tools and you're using it the right way, it goes a tremendous difference. You know, when I used to travel, years ago when people used to fly, so I would do a lot of shopping, and I used to have a little scale, a little portable scale. It's like about this big with a hook that you lift up the suitcase and see exactly how much it weighs. So for me it was a good investment because I travel so much and I do a lot of shopping, and so I have to keep track of the things. But every professional needs whatever his tools are. My father was friendly with a caterer, and he was making Simchas Beis HaShoeva, and he wanted to borrow his chafing dishes or whatever it was. And he said to my father would always tell the story. He says, Marty, I will give you my car, I'll give you my house, I'll give you the shirt off my back, I'll give you my last nickel. But you can never have my Caleb. I don't give my Caleb to anybody. He says, I'm responsible for the kashrus of them, I take care of them, people rely on me, nothing. So you understand, if you have the right tools, yeah. I have a son who's a foodie, and what can I do? When I used to go to America years ago, when people used to fly, yeah? So I always would add in going to Bed Bath and Beyond. I love looking at gadgets and stuff like that. So they had this one thing. It wasn't expensive. It was basically a plastic stick with a little plastic X at the end. It was used for when you brown chopped meat for chopping it up, right, to keep it separate. So my son sees it, Now my son is a foodie. He watches all these videos. He knows all about food, And he says to me, Elton Brown, I think that's who it was. I don't remember all the names yet. He says, I never buy a kli unless you can use it for more than one thing. That can only be used for one thing, so I wouldn't get it. So, okay, I hear it. Yeah, there's a concept of multitasking. It certainly is. Certainly makes sense. Yeah, but be that as it may, when you have the right tools, life is so much easier, right? When you have to peel a lot of things and you don't have a good peeler, life is just that much more difficult. So if you're talking about davening Rosh Hashanah, the first thing is you have to decide, what is my machzor of choice? And I would say have a few, at least two. You switch off. Yeah, I know certain Baltakeyas who have two shofars. They're blowing one shofar. If they see it's getting stuck for them, they switch to the other one. Yeah. There's actually a fellow became a Baltakeya, and he told me that there's a guy in Bnei Brak who matches the shofar to your mouth. He looks at your mouth, he hands you a shofar, he says, blow that. He goes, nope, take this one, nope, take this one, that. So he finds says, that's your shofar. He says, it's the easiest shofar that I ever blew in my life because it was designed for me. Yeah. So obviously, if you have the right tools, life goes much easier. So you need a machzor. Some people like tradition. And I have here still my old burn-bound machzor from when I was growing up. This was a big step forward because before that you only had Adlers. I think I still have an Adler one. Yeah, and this was a big step forward. Burn-bound machzor. There was a burn-bound siddur and a burn-bound machzor, right? For most modern English-speaking Jews, obviously, they use the art scroll. Now, full disclosure, I don't like the print. I know you're not allowed to say that because they checked it out. Is the next thing. I find the print very hard to read. Also, they have this concept that I have to tell you I never really understood, where they suddenly write things in little dark gray windows. Let's see if I can find one for you. And I find them very difficult to read. There you go. Like Modem Dirabanan. So it's like dark writing on a dark gray. This one's not even as dark as some of them. It's very hard. I'm an old man. But obviously, since not everybody is conversant, particularly with the various piyutim, so the art scroll comes in handy. Yeah, I heard of an Adam Gadol who grew up in America who said that he davens from the art scroll because he says, listen, I don't know what everything means in every piyut. Okay. As you can see from the fact that the back binding is coming off, my default machzor that I usually use is called the machzor hagra. It follows by the gra. I like it because I find the print to be large and clear, and I find it personally helpful. There is, of course, the standard machzor rabbah, and I will sometimes go to this just because it flows. There's a certain flow to it. It's not interrupted by commentaries and explanations. Now, a word about commentary. There are these things that are available. There are different ones. I don't want to mention any by name, which is a parish on different lines in a seder or a machzor. I strongly recommend against them because you're not davening, you're learning, which is a nice thing to do, but that's not what davening is. And so they go, Baruch atah Hashem. Elokeinu. Now, obviously, that's a person reading very quickly. That's not davening. Whatever preparation you're going to do, you have to do beforehand. But b'shas ma'isa, you got to daven. You got to daven. Now, I don't know if anybody else is in my matziv. I may have mentioned this in the past. I have ADD. And so my mind has a tendency to wander. Anyway, so if I daven slow, forget about it. And I did that for years. I used to daven a Shemona Esrei over an hour because my mind would just keep drifting. And I had to come back and remember where I was and what I was doing. So I asked a number of people for an eitzah. I mentioned this earlier that you asked people for an eitzah. And the eitzah they gave me was, move it along. Move fast enough before your mind has a chance to wander away. And so I daven faster than almost anybody else in the minyanim. I daven in Eretz Yisrael. In America, very often I'm bringing up the rear, depending on which shul I'm in. But you got to keep it going, keep it moving. That's has been my own personal experience. And the more that you keep it moving, so to speak, the better off you're going to be in being able to keep your focus. Keep your focus on what you're doing. Right? Okay. So when you're going through, and we're going to go through the davening, it's worthwhile to do it with the machzor that you're going to be using, because there are certain points that are more important than other points, and you have to try to focus on that. And you have to keep your focus, because I can't do everything. I'll be realistic. Right? If you're not used to doing this for many years. Okay, so let's talk about the structure of the tefillas. Rosh Hashanah, you're going to have a Maariv, you're going to have a Shachris, you're going to have a Mussaf, and you're going to have a Mincha. The Amida for Maariv, Shachris, and Mincha are all exactly the same. Mussaf is the longest Amida of the entire year, because there are 10 psukim on Malchios, 10 psukim on Zechronos, and 10 psukim on Shachris. And so the whole thing takes a very long time. When you do Chazaras Hashatz, it takes even longer because of all the piyutim that they add in. Yeah. I've never davened in a Sephardic Rosh Hashanah, but they tell me it goes much faster. They don't have a lot of the piyutim. And this is what I was told, and I don't want to run a limb, but they do some of the tekiyas during the silent Shemona Esrei. So their Rosh Hashanah davening is much shorter. I have a classic shiur of mine called Why Be Jewish. You can find it online, I'm sure. I've done it many times. Probably my most go-to shiur that I give, especially for new audiences. And I gave it once in a Sephardic school, and part of it there is I do a whole thing on the Sanatokef, who will live and who will die, and they had no idea what I was talking about. They don't say the Sanatokef. You don't say the Sanatokef. I told this story before, but like when I was growing up, I didn't speak Yiddish. My parents, it was their secret language, and I went to yeshivas that either touched into English or into Ivrit, so I never learned never learned Yiddish, and you'd meet older Yidden in the old generation, and they'd start talking to you in Yiddish, and I'm saying, sorry, I don't speak Yiddish. You don't speak Jewish? You're a Jew and you don't speak Jewish? You don't speak Jewish? That's what I felt like. You don't sing the Tzad Taikim? Who doesn't sing the Tzad Taikim? You're Jewish? So that's obviously the crescendo. Now, let's go through Maariv, first off. Maariv is the same as every other Maariv for Shabbos and for Yontif. If you daven Nusach HaGra like they do here in Eretz Yisrael, so then at the end of Hashkivenu, you go right into Kaddish, right? On Erev Shabbos, they don't do the V'Shomeru, and so on Rosh Hashanah, they don't do the Tikva Chodesh, Tikva Shofar. Stop. They don't do the pasuk Tiku b'chodesh shofar b'kesi yom chagenu chag Yisrael hu mishpat lo Yaakov. But if you do, they'll do it over there. They'll do Kaddish. They'll do the Amida, and the Amida on Rosh Hashanah is a little different in that normally the first three brachas are the same, the last three brachas are the same, and in the middle it changes on a yontif. Right? The middle bracha is different. Here, the Atar Kadosh changes. So that itself changes. Yeah, there's a much longer Atar Kadosh. And of course, it ends Hamelech HaKadosh instead of Hakel Kadosh. So, but you get to Shemona Esrei. You say, at the end, you just say one little kapitel. Obviously, the Shabbos, and you say Vaychulu. And otherwise, you just say the kapitel, the Dovid Mizvah, La Hashem Ha'aretz B'Loya, right? And you say that, and then you say Aleinu, and you say Dovid Hashem Ha'aretz. So, except for the Amida, right? It's the same as the Maariv during any other time during Elul, right? Obviously, if you add in the Tikka B'Chodesh Shofar, so that's, a little extra addition. Otherwise, it's like basically the same. That's Maariv. Shachris is like any other Shabbos or Yontif Shachris. I should say Yontif, right? Because unless it's Shabbos, then you don't do Kel Adon, right? So you have the Yontif Psukkah Zimra. Say the same thing. The only difference is you don't start at Shochen Ad, you move a little bit beforehand and you start at Hamelech. Otherwise, it's the same. The language over there in what would be Shochen Ad changes a little bit because normally by the Ashkenazim, Fiishim Tisalav of the Reit Tzadikim, Tis Barach, Lashon Chasidim, Tis Shemam of the Kerev Kadoshim, Tis Kadosh, which spells out Yitzchak. And on Rosh Hashanah Kippur, we change it around so the last one spell out Rivka. Otherwise, it's more or less the same. And then you have Birchas Kriya Shema, which, again, if it's a weekday, is the same as any other weekday. And you end with Milchamocha, and then you say the Amida, the same one that you said at night. And if you're in a minyan, obviously you say Chazar Sashatz. There's no Hallel. There's Kriyas HaTorah, again, if you're in a shul with a Haftarah. And then there's Tekiyah Shaifa, and they do the first 40 kolos. And then they start Chazar Sashatz. Chazar Sashatz starts, of course, with a Hineni, with Shlich Tzibur asks for Shus to add extra things into the davening. And you do Chazar Sashatz with a number of piyutim that are added in, but otherwise you can find Chazar Sashatz spelled out. Part of the Mussaf is Aleinu, and when you do this on Rosh Hashanah in Shul, the men actually bow at Aleinu. They do what's called the Yikud, which is like what you see the Muslims do, where they bow their head down to the ground on their knees. And they go through Mussaf. Sprinkled throughout Mussaf is more Tkiyah Shofar. And then the end of davening is like every other Shabbos. There's Enkel Elokeinu, there's Aleinu, there's Shir Shal Yom, Dovid Hashem Ori, and they finish up the different minhagim where you finish it up, and they finish up the last of the Tekiyas. That is Shachris Mussaf. That's the Seder. Mincha, it's like Mincha of any other Shabbos / Yontif. You do Ashrei U'Volat Tzion. If it's Shabbos, you have Kriyas Torah. If not, you go right into your Amida, which is the same as the one you said in Maariv, and the same as the one you said in Shachris. And at the end, you say Aleinu. That's it. That is the structure of the davening. So if you're not taking into account the piyutim, the davening is not much different than the davening you used to. The tunes are different, to be sure. There are certain other additions and changes that go on, but that's essentially the structure. So we're going to look at more of this as we proceed, but I wanted to at least start by giving you the structure of how to go about it, and the Mitzvah Hashem in the discussions to come, we'll go into more detail and hopefully talk about how to make it more meaningful for you. And that's it for this week. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can leave comments, you can ask questions, you can sponsor an episode, and there is an option over there to go to Rabbi Orlofsky /music, because someone asked me how can I get the theme song to put it on my podcast. So there's a place over there. I don't really know because I'm not that savvy, but if you know how to maneuver around a website, there's a place over there where you can go to Rabbi Orlofsky /music, I think it is. RabbiOrlofsky.com /music, something like that. Anyway, and that's it. That's it for this episode. I'm Dovid Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah, anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.